There are moments in debates where people pick up on something. I think back to the 92 debate where George H.W. Bush looks at his watch for like 2 seconds. And my God, you think he would have, I mean, the reaction from the press, you would think that he had gotten a Nazi flag, taken off all of his clothes, and run around the debate stage screaming for the next 30 minutes. They focused on it. That's what people focus on in debates. This clip is what people were focusing on last night after the debate. Let's run it, Alex.
Yeah.
It's just.
So everybody's shaking hands.
Yep, shakes hand with Joe Biden. And then clearly the rift is with Bernie Sanders. So you're going to make an attempt to shake his hand to show. Really?
Gold's back.
Wow, are we like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this
anyway,
is fantastic for the Democrats.
Okay, and then, of course, Anderson Cooper. Hey, hi, Anderson. How are you doing? Hope you're well. All right, thank you very much for tuning up today. So, yeah, I mean, listen, people are, we're going to have frame by frame. It's a Zapruder tape now, frame by frame. And, but still, not a good look.
Not cool.
For two top Democrats fighting over something
Bernie tried to shake her hand.
Stupid as this.
Heilman.
Oh, sorry, you guys, back to me. Yes, total. Look, the tape, I think, you're right, Joe, it's going to be Zapruder. People are going to analyze it. There were people trying to do lip reading on it after the debate last night. And as usual, in the environment we now live in on Twitter, you had people who looked at that tape and were like, man, it was Elizabeth Warren really showed Bernie Sanders. And then you had another bunch of people who were like, oh, my God, Bernie Sanders really showed Elizabeth Warren. And it makes my head hurt. How the same context of the story where, some people are absolutely convinced that Bernie Sanders is lying and other people are absolutely convinced that Elizabeth Warren is lying. And I get heat when I say, I don't know. I don't really know what happened in this conversation. But I do know this. I think, this moment of the debate last night, and it was a dull debate. It was a plotting debate. By
the way, John, I mean, nobody looked good on that debate stage last night. Let's just say what everybody's saying behind the scenes. I mean, who I've talked to, nobody looked good on the debate stage last night. It was probably everybody's weakest performance.
It was a dull and plotting debate. You had 39 minutes at the top of the debate about foreign policy and trade, and not really even any pointed questions about Iran. It was really kind of like, why are you the best person to be commander-in-chief? I really was sort of stunned by how airless and lifeless the debate was. So this Sanders-Warren thing had the emotional energy coming into it. That exchange had a lot of people. It was the moment people were waiting for. And I got to say, whatever happened a year ago and whatever is going to happen now, and that's pretty important, and why the thing that happened at the end of the debate may matter in the sense that if those two keep fighting over the course of the next 2 weeks going into Iowa, that could have real consequences for the race. But whatever you think about all of that, that moment when Elizabeth Warren pivoted and made the point about the electoral success of the women on stage versus the men on stage was a good debate moment. It was a scripted moment for sure. She knew the question was coming, but she stuck the landing, and you could see millions of women, Democratic women across the country, going damn right. So I think it's the only moment maybe that anybody's going to remember from this debate 24 hours from now. And so I think the question about this debate is I don't think it changes any of the dynamics in this race over the next 2 weeks.
No.
We still have four candidates all kind of bunched up at the top. I think this debate will quickly fade from memory. But the question going forward now is are the Sanders and Warren, not just as candidates, but their teams and their campaigns, are they going to lay it aside now and get back to campaigning? Or is this battle between Sanders and Warren, which is a real thing, not a media creation?
Right.
These campaigns are mad at each other. Is that going to continue or not? I don't know the answer.
Well, the thing is, if they were debating over policy, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But here we are on the same night that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, called Democrats traitors. They're not shaking each other's hands, and they're whining and whimpering about, God knows what, and people trying to recall 2-year-old phone conversations. And the whole thing should send a chill up Democrat spine. it's fine because these people are still not ready for prime time.
Yeah, when I heard John say, and he's right, that online and behind the scenes people are saying, yeah, Elizabeth really stuck it to Bernie, or Bernie really stuck to Elizabeth. My only thought was, those aren't the people you're supposed to be sticking it to.
No.
Donald Trump is the one, theoretically, Democrats are supposed to be sticking it to. A name we haven't mentioned yet this morning, Joe Biden. Joe Biden sat there and let them go back and forth and volley on this question. As, by the way, we got no closer to the truth on the question of whether or not Bernie Sanders said that because Elizabeth Warren wasn't asked and followed up on. But Joe Biden can sit back and let them fight it out and hopefully ride it out until Election Day, I guess, Jonathan.
Yeah, that was clearly his strategy yesterday. There was no breakout moment, perhaps other than the Senator Warren's comment that John just mentioned. I mean, it did seem that Biden was willing to kind of stay out of the fray there. You know, former Mayor Pete Buttigieg as well, Amy Klobuchar. People had moments here or there, but there was no. I don't think the dynamic of the race changed at all. We have the top four bunched within a few points of each other. Far more likely to impact things is the fact that, I mean, there's an impeachment trial that those articles are being transmitted today. That trial is going to start in earnest next week, and there are going to be senators on that stage who are not going to be able to go to Iowa because they're going to be stuck in Washington on that. And both Warren and Sanders are going to really have to curtail their campaigning. And just very last comment on the handshake and the video that we're all going to be seeing time and time again. The Tom Steyer part of it is also really funny because he's there throughout the whole thing. So I think what we need is a congressional subpoena to Tom Steyer, who would have heard the exchange between the two of them on stage, and that would be how we get to the bottom of
The
it.
Steyer Commission.
Hey, Mike, you know who was missing last night from the stage for me? Donald Trump. You know, people at home have this, I think, visceral need to feel a candidate punch out. I thought Amy Klobuchar would pivot each time there's a question and somehow bring it back as a contrast to Trump. But to me, when we have this ogre who is so defining, and every research tells you who can beat Trump, that's the greatest driver, I felt he was sorely missing. Obviously, the candidates in their research chose to not make it about him, but there's a way to still keep it about you and about policy and your message, but at the same time punch out, and I thought that was sorely missing.
Well, Joe just raised the critical point, Donnie. I mean, how can these people standing there, all of them wanting to be president of the United States, not refer to the fact that within the last 48 hours, the President of the United States photoshopped an image of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, an anti-Muslim image, calling them traitors. Basically, he's called nearly all of the Democrats running for president traitors, and not address that in terms of being able to take on Donald Trump. Take him on now. You don't wait until September or October. Take him on now for what he's already done just in the last 10 days. Yeah. And we talk about endless wars all the time. Last night was proof that we now have endless debates. And you raised Tom Steyer is standing there. Look at probably a good guy, probably, he's certainly got a legitimate business record to look at. But there's something wrong with the debate formats when Tom Steyer is on the stage and Cory Booker is not on the stage.
Yeah, John Heilman, it really is shocking that the decisions that these Democratic candidates have made, shocking politically, over the past 6-8 months. Many of them in the first 2 or 3 debates decided that it was going to be a good move to attack Barack Obama on health care and immigration. Just stupid. The guy, 90% approval rating. And very few of them focus on Trump. Forgive me for saying this, but the first time I ran, there were like 11 people in the field. You think I ever mentioned any of those people's names? No, I ran against Bill Clinton. It was 1994. You asked me a question about another candidate, I talked about Bill Clinton. You asked me a question about whatever it was, it all went back to Bill Clinton. And I was this kid, nobody knew who I was, but they're like, okay, he's the guy that's going to go up and fight. And here we are on such a larger stage where I will say it, the framework of Madisonian democracy is at risk. America's standing in the world is at risk. Our government and everything that we have believed that it was striving to be is at risk. And Democrats are debating what somebody may have said on the telephone 2 years ago. Kids are watching the show this morning, so I can't tell you what I think that is. I'll just say that's messed up. And to paraphrase George W. Bush, one of the great quotes of all time, that's some weird stuff. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.